And we can get started. As hopefully you all know, we are here on the first of a series of webinars through the Maine food processing work group. This is today's session is a day in the life of Maine processors and aggregators. So we're all here to learn some more about what it takes to move Maine food from farm to market and the daily challenges and innovations that folks in the middle of the supply chain are developing or experiencing. And as Annie mentioned, we're lucky to have a full panel of professionals who are representing a variety of perspectives from the middle of the supply chain. We have Scott Major of Fork Food Lab, the processing manager over there. We have Graham Henderson, the Senior Director of Sales, Marketing, and Customer Service at Native Maine Produce and Specialty Foods. We also have Colleen Hanlon Smith, owner operator at Peak Season. And we may get Jeff Wolowitz on here too, who's the founder and owner of Heiwa Tofu. So I will let you all introduce yourselves a little bit more. Yeah, as Annie mentioned, we're going to do about 45 minutes of panel discussion, and then we'll have some time for attendees to get together and debrief takeaways from this conversation and bring some questions back to the group. So to kick things off, I'd love to hear from each panelist what brought you into this work and what keeps you in it. And maybe we can start with Scott, and then other panelists can jump in as the spirit moves you. Sound okay?
Sounds good. So my name's Scott Mazer. Like Alita said, I am the processing manager here at Fork Food Lab. Um, what brought me into this work? Well, so I was a longtime chef in the kitchens of restaurants and food trucks and food co-ops and all kinds of different stuff. Um, and really, I had been looking for something like this where I could work with food, be creative, um, not get yelled at all the time, um, and serve my community. Local food and farms and small farms and all this stuff is really important to me. Um, I learned a lot of that stuff when I was working at the food co-op in Keene. Um, I would say what keeps me in it is like the work that we've been able to do here so far. I've been developing several different products for farms through some grants. We've been working with Harvesting Good to develop some broccoli products. We're actually going to be doing a big tasting for that next week. And after this, I will be forming probably 10,000 broccoli tots. And yeah, I crunched some numbers last night, and we've been able to process over 10,000 pounds of surplus and second quality food since I started last September. So I hadn't really taken a good hard look at like the totals of what we've been able to accomplish in the last year, and that was like really encouraging for me. Next.
Colleen, you want to jump in?
Sure, happy
Do,
to.
Colleen, you are sideways for all of us. I don't know if you're able to. There you go.
That's funny. Hi. Good to be upright and with all of you today. What a great group is gathered here. Thank you, Alita and Annie, for bringing us together. I've been working in the intersection of building markets in step with Maine farmers and food producers and access for Mainers for the last 2 decades. And what got me into the work 20 years ago was a lot of a sort of resurgence of farmers that needed more markets for their products and an interest in supporting that. And kind of thinking about it from a systems perspective. Also wasn't in a position to buy a farm myself and felt like this is the way I can serve. This is the way I can contribute. And what keeps me in the work is really an undying passion for it. I could expound upon that, but also, the lay of the land has changed a lot in terms of, I think the market is strong now, and actually a need to create more farmland access and protect the resources that we have here in Maine. There's a lot of corporate pressure, and we are losing acreage year over year, despite having such a dynamic and resilient in many ways local food system. And also just want to note that feeling especially invigorated by this work with a lot of our basic needs under threat in the times that we're living in, what we went through recently with SNAP, what we're going through, what I anticipate we still will be going through, just really calls upon all of us to care about how we feed our neighbors and how we support our farmers. So thanks for having me here today.
Awesome. All right, I'm Graham Henderson. I am the Senior Director of Sales, Marketing, and Customer Service for Native Maine Produce and Specialty Foods. I joined the organization just on 2 years ago as of October. And I've come from a background of being a chef and starting my career there at the age of 14, and was able to be a chef all over the country in the operations side, running food service programming, and then ultimately landed in the sales side of the arena. I think much like Scott, I was sort of questioning the life path that I had set out for myself when I was 15, and kind of came to some different conclusions with like my lower back. And not getting yelled at all the time is kind of nice, but ended up here with Native Maine, and I had a couple different opportunities to land here a couple years ago, and was really much more invigorated by being able to be sort of at the ground level as a community member alongside our operating partners and customers, versus going to a Fortune 100 company that's sort of that corporate pressure that Colleen alluded to. And it's very interesting to kind of go to market and almost go to battle on a daily basis, trying to become an advocate for our customers, and obviously do what we can to get all the great local products that we have in our building out to end users, whether they be independent retailers or restaurants and cafes and things like that. A lot of institutional dining as well. And that's, I think, the what keeps us in the work on a daily basis here at Native Maine is sort of being able to be more of an advocate that way for the local products and projects that are here in Maine, and not kind of being another piece in the puzzle of that sort of top-down pressure from these really giant corporations that more and more over time, kind of like everything else, are consolidating the supply chain of food in our industry. And it's nice to be able to kind of be community and locally focused first, and really kind of live that mission and those values on a daily basis as we go out and kind of try and keep the rest of the supply chain honest. And we have over 145, closer to 150 now, local partners, whether it's farms or artisan makers, in our book of business that we can offer every day. And that's, I think, one of the things that we all enjoy the most, is being able to connect those products and those people and those farms to the restaurants and kitchens where they're going to be showcased on menus or on shelves. And that's what we do every day.
Awesome. Thank you all. I feel like I'm hearing certainly a lot of passion behind the work that you're all doing, and this sense of like where you fit into making the local food system work, and what a critical piece that is in the equation, especially when trying to work against a lot of corporate consolidation and the like. Our next question for you all is, what internal systems or practices within your organizations make your operations run smoothly? So we'd love to to hear if you have a story that you can share about either a success or a mishap that taught you something important about the work that you do, be it processing, distribution, or sales. Does anyone want to jump in with some reflections on that?
I could start us off. I think, in Native Maine, it's a very much a day-by-day business. We're working at the pace of sort of all the end users that I think, the audience is interested in hearing about. And we learn every day, we make mistakes every day, but we try our best to sort of get them right. And I think, for the end user perspective, we're kind of in the middle of supply chain, as was mentioned earlier. The number one kind of pain point in the industry from distributor to end user restaurant is just sort of the unknown unknowns. And a lot of times, if there is something that comes up for the end user, whether it's something that didn't make the truck, or something that wasn't the quality they were expecting, those things happen on a daily basis. Distribution doesn't function to try and aim. We aim for perfection, but we know we're never going to hit it. We talk a lot about industry best, so trying to hit those standards of 98.5% on time deliveries, 98.5% or better, stocked delivery to the end users. We really kind of triangulated that's the biggest pain point, regardless of who the distribution partner might be for somebody, whether it's ourselves as like a local regional partner, or one of the big Fortune 100 players. The number one thing that really can kind of cause end user tumult and potentially lost business for those of us distributing is those unknown unknowns. So we've really heavily focused on making things right, and it's really that simple as a mission for us at this point. And it could be something that happened through Native Maine. Maybe the quality of a product wasn't great, because unfortunately, when you're selling produce, it grows in the ground in dirt with a bunch of bugs, and then it gets into a box and it's immediately starting to kind of decay over time. So we do the best that we can to keep everything as fresh as possible every day, but there are going to be instances where, something that came out of the ground isn't inch perfect. And if a chef needs that, we'll certainly jump on it and fix those mistakes. But we've also really gone, I think, above and beyond where, if somebody forgot to submit an order, or another distribution partner didn't have something that they were counting on that day, we'll do everything that we possibly can to fix it for our customers. And I think we've really seen success leaning into that, just making it right policy. Regardless of sort of fault, we always want to deliver for our customers and help them meet the expectations of their guests. At the end of the day, that's what the pressure is. They've promised to deliver a certain level of service or standard, and we want to help them do that, not harm them in trying to get there. So and that, I think, really kind of speaks to the sense of kind of community that we have from the building that emanates out to Alex Cowan, who's one of our field sales reps, is on the team here, and he's out there with his peers, sort of on the front lines, having those communications with customers every day. We want to hold up our end of the bargain and kind of leave it better than we found it, regardless of what's happening out there. So that's been, I think, a really nice piece of the puzzle, and it helps us sort of feel even more entrenched in the communities that we're working in. If we can kind of all row in the same direction and help people get where they want to go for their businesses, then we feel good about what we're doing.
Thanks, Graham. If you're willing, would you share a little bit more about some examples of the unknowns that you're talking about? I'm hearing, an example around quality, food quality, and wanting to make sure that that's up to par. But I think the folks here are really interested in hearing,
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a day-to-day business
what
model
you're dealing with.
for food service can bring new challenges every day. I think that's one of the kind of nice things for those of us, a lot of us on the sales side of our organization, at least, have operator backgrounds. So we've been in those kitchens, and we've been the chefs on the other side of the phone. And something's different every day, which is exciting and nice, and it keeps it fresh, and it kind of keeps it interesting. But there's certain things that can happen, i.e. our vendor might be delayed or might have a short on a product because of something going on with their manufacturing processes. We try and do what we can to pivot in those situations and provide some kind of a solution. We want to stay solution oriented as much as possible, but we'll even go as far. This is sort of a generalized example, but we've even gone as far as starting to like DoorDash or Uber Eats items. If somebody's out in, Phippsburg at the bottom of the can't get there from here outlet, we'll send milk or cilantro or whatever they need, right? If there's something that they're expecting that they can't get when they expect it. So It's always a little bit different. It's hard to kind of come up with a concrete example. It's just sort of the day-by-day business model that we live here. And yeah, I think that's kind of just part of the fun of daily distribution.
Fresh and dynamic.
Yeah.
Thanks, Graham.
Hey,
Colleen or Scott?
sorry, Jeff
Oh.
is here. Can we take a quick break and introduce Jeff?
Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, sorry, I'm a little bit late.
That's okay.
A
Welcome.
little, yeah.
You're only a little bit late. Our other panelists have just introduced themselves and shared a little bit about what brought them to this work and what keeps them in it. So if you want to do the same.
Cool. Great. Well, thank you. I'm Jeff Wolowitz, the owner of Heiwa Tofu. Now located in Rockport, Maine. I started the business in 2008, so we're in our 18th year now. I really wanted to be. Had been a high school science teacher for 5 years before that. Between that and being in college, I spent 3 or 4 years working on small diversified farms. This was in the early 2000s. And there just wasn't a lot of resources then for new beginning farmers. So I became a teacher. That wasn't quite working for me either. And I wanted to get back into the local food system and figured I'd do it as a processor, where my goal was to take regional and locally produced agricultural goods and add value to them. And I wanted to do something that was nutritious and nourishing and wholesome and sort of a pantry item as well. And started looking for niches where there was nobody else doing it. And tofu emerged as one of them. It kind of could have been anything. So that was 18 years ago. Flash forward to now. What keeps me doing it? Yeah, it's kind of, it's evolved over the years, right? Having this crew of about 10 employees now, and just really working, trying to provide good paying jobs for them, has become really important. And just creating a good workspace for them and creating opportunities for that crew is a big part of why I keep doing what I'm doing. But then also just I thinking about an exit is what kind of keeps me going at this point. After 18 years, I'd really like to have a pretty nice exit. And there's nothing, I was never looking to scale it to something giant. But that's sort of where my focus has been, starting to move and getting it to a point where I can walk away and leave it. And no, I don't. I'm in my late 40s. When I exit, I'm not going to retire, but it would, my goal is to not be thinking about saving for retirement too much anymore with my exit. Yeah. I think that's a good stopping point.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. All right, so we can get back to our other question. And Jeff, just to clue you in, folks are thinking about and responding to this question about what systems make your operation run smoothly, and if you can share a story about a mishap or a success that kind of highlights something that's important to the work that you do working. So Scott or Colleen, did either of you have a reflection on that?
Sure, I have lots to say about that. So unlike some of my colleagues here, the Fork Food Processing Department has been around for almost exactly 1 year and has exactly one employee. And so, yeah, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, creating those systems and organizational stuff is really challenging for me. I've always been a hands-on guy. In 2023 to 2024, I took a year off kitchens and I worked in a medical facility. And that was the most time I had spent on a computer since college. So 14 years. And so, yeah, so even just learning that stuff was a challenge. But things have come to a point now where we have quite a few processing clients. We have other projects in the work, research and development, all the stuff I've talked about before. And yeah, it's gotten to the point where those systems need to be created. In fact, that's probably what I'm going to be doing the remainder of the week once I finish my production. And yeah, I can definitely share a mishap that happened with that recently. Um, so we had a company that wanted to come on and do a pilot cook. Um, so a pilot cook is when someone has a recipe that's already formulated, ready to go, and they just want to come in, cook it here at Fork Food Lab and see how it works. This company wanted to do a 1,000-pound run for their first pilot cook. I didn't think that was a very good idea, but I was told that I just need to do it anyway. And so I did it. And I think, there were a few mistakes there. Number one, I should have put my foot down and said, this is not going to work. And, the whole thing was very unorganized from all parties. And, it ended up taking 3 days to complete that production and get everything together. So yeah, I won't be doing that again. But what was great about that is, fully understanding everything that needs to be in place beforehand in terms of inventory. We use a new program called Gladius. And so that is a food production tracking system, tracks inventory, production, formulas, can run reports, all that stuff. And it's kind of fun because it's essentially a beta right now. I don't know if they're calling it a beta, but we're pretty much beta testing it for them. And so if there's features I need or things I notice, I can actually communicate directly with the team and have them kind of customize it for us, which is nice. But yeah, really utilizing that as much as I can. And just now, and then now that I've had that experience, I understand what it's going to take to complete that 1,000-pound run. So although it was a bit of a mess at first, I think it's something that's doable for us. And now I know what it takes. So learn it.
You are a pioneer, Scott. Sounds like you're being you're doing a lot of learning and being forced into creating some of those systems a lot on your own. So kudos to you for doing that all on your own. Colleen, any reflections that you wanted to share on this point?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. I really liked what Graham had to say. I mean, this is kind of a crazy industry to be working in perishable foods, and though we strive for perfection, we know that it's not going to hit there, and so it's always trying to make that mark and always being ready to. Whether it's on the vendor or the customer end of the equation, make up for whether it's a missed item or a suggested substitution or a quality concern in the ways that we can. By way of context, like we're a small distributor, so like a native as a mid-sized distributor has different parameters that they may work with or lessons to be learned. And as a small size distributor, our team is smaller, and we also exclusively are selling Maine foods, Maine produced foods and Maine grown foods. And so I just give a little bit of that context because what we run into may look different from a mid-size or a broadline distributor in terms of what those mishaps look like. And the two things that I would highlight that we've learned from are our teams are smaller. I'm speaking to both Peak Season, that's 4 of us, and Daybreak, that's 11 as our sister business that assists with warehousing and trucking services that we work really closely with. And so one thing that we've learned pretty quickly is that there's huge benefit in cross training, and like our teams know everyone else's job, so that they can be there and we can really work as a team as we move forward. And that's sort of something that we learned the hard way over time, was really this need to be able to have us all in the weekly flow of what we do that is so intrinsically tied from one task to the next, have a sense of what everyone's doing, even if you have your own lane, be able to hop in, is something that we've implemented over the years and has really, really made a difference. And then also, because we are exclusively Maine foods, we really put a lot of attention into the planning that we do, and this may come up with one of the upcoming questions, so I won't dive into it too far. But the planning that we do with our farmers and food producers, specifically around crop planning with farms, in advance of the season, and we also have multiple receiving days on highly perishable products and move them out the door very quickly. So we're not warehousing greens or super perishable fruits for long periods of time. We're getting them in, we're getting them out to try to reduce what are those inevitable shortfalls that we as distributors are gonna run into in a highly perishable industry with very tight margins. And I think I'll stop there, but it's like, there used to be someone I worked with that had fail better farm, and there's the Beckett quote of just like, you know, ever tried, ever failed, no matter, fail again, fail better. And that's pretty much what working in produce and perishable food distribution is. It's just like, you have to be ready to fail and learn from it and keep striving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that gives me
sense.
comfort hearing that from someone else too. So I appreciate that. I'll sign off on it.
There. Thank you, Colleen. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense that you working with a small team, you'd have to stay really nimble and make sure that everybody kind of knows the entire process and systems, even if they do have their own lanes. If we have more time later on, I'd love to hear a little bit more about the forward contracting piece, as I think that's a really critical internal system that should be highlighted here. But let's chug along. I'm excited about this next question, which is, what resources or supports have been most helpful to your work? Where are the gaps, and how could new or existing programs better support you or others like you? I think, Jeff, you may have had some ready responses to this one if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, there's so many resources. It's pretty incredible, and what I've always just valued about working in Maine, and just making sure to stay networked so you're able to get access to the full slate, because there's so many. In particular, and I think everybody's pretty familiar with Manufacturing Extension Partnership, has been an amazing resource for us in all things manufacturing. And also, of course, Maine Center for Entrepreneurs is just also a great resource, and they're networked well also. So even having them as a launching point, they can often send you in the directions you need. Those are the two that I've really worked with, and also thinking about funding opportunities as well. And Alita, is that kind of here to mention that briefly, or pick that up later when around policy work, or pull it all in right now?
Yeah, go ahead and mention them. And Jeff,
So-
could you just say again that first resource, manufacturing?
Yeah,
partnership?
Manufacturing Extension Partnership. They're in Augusta. They're sort of like the cooperative extension or the ag extension of the manufacturing sector. A lot of you probably have met Bill Whittier, who's one of the consultants there. That they have 7 of them. They're housed under the NIST, and have both federal, state, and private funding is how they operate. In a great organization. And so then also, coming up, there's a whole nother round of potential state funding for food infrastructure. I've been sitting, and I'm part of the Ag and Forest Food Products Infrastructure Fund, which is a piece of legislation that was passed, and we've been trying to come up with how we want to, what sort of funding types we'll move forward with. Currently, the legislature allocated $500,000 towards this fund, which is but a drop in the bucket for doing infrastructure. But there are bond issues and other pieces of legislation that are coming, and I think there's momentum building for many millions of dollars worth of funding towards food and food-related businesses and farming businesses coming up. And it's critical that we have this public funding to help food businesses and help our food systems move forward. So keep your eye out on that, and hopefully we'll be getting to vote on some bond issues soon and other pieces of legislation coming forward there. So keep your eyes open for opportunities from the state.
Totally. Thanks for that plug, Jeff. Others want to hop in on this question about resources or supports that have been helpful to your work, and also like gaps if you're seeing like I could really use help with X, Y, and Z, and I'm not finding an outlet to support with that.
So probably the number one resource for me has been the Western Mass Food Processing Center, which is part of the Franklin County Community Development Center in Greenfield, Mass. I've done 2 visits down there. We're essentially just copying their business. They have provided all the paperwork and everything. They've been so helpful. I have Liz as the operations manager there, and she built that program from scratch, just like I'm doing at Fork Food Lab now. If I have a problem in production with a spreadsheet, whatever, I was just calling her on Monday being like, hey, I have to recook this jam. What do I do? And yeah, they've just been incredible. I've also visited several other processing spaces, Genuine Local in New Hampshire, Hope in Maine, down in Rhode Island. I guess that's it. Those 3. So that's all been really helpful. Yeah, we've worked with Dr. Beth Calder from University of Maine. We've also worked with Bill Whittier to get our horizontal flow wrapper going. As far as missing pieces, I think a lot of you know this, but a lot of you probably don't, that we have our second part of our build out here at Fork Food Lab, which is incomplete, which includes a processing space. And eventually we will have fruit and vegetable as well as meat processing and 2,500 square feet of palletized storage space, dry, cold, and frozen. And I'm sure, like everyone else, the big missing resource is funding. And so we need funding, we need people, and in order to hire people, we need funding. So I don't have too much more to say about that because that's not my wheelhouse, but I know that that's what we need.
Yeah, the chicken and the egg situation going on there. Scott, will you paint a picture of the space that you're processing in now and what this build out would allow for future processing at Fork?
Absolutely. So right now I've been processing in our shared kitchen space. It's completely different what's happening in there every day, and all of our equipment is spread out. So for example, if I'm making jam, I'm cooking jam on 2 different stock pot burners that are on 2 different sides of the kitchen with a wall separating them. And then I'm bringing that all over to a table where I'm then going to put it in our tilt skillet, which I'm using as a water bath. So I'm running around like a crazy person, and I'm getting in people's way. People are getting in my way. And we have to advise all of our clients about their allergen statements on our food right now, because we have no control over the allergens that are going to be in that space. And so once we're in the processing space, all the equipment's going to be right there in front of me. Just an example with the tilt skillet. So right now we are using a 30-gallon tilt skillet. We have a 60-gallon Legion tilt skillet that's ready to go as soon as the processing room is finished. And that'll double my capacity for canning. So for jams right now, I can do 48 jars at a time, and that's what my batch size has to be. But once we get into that space, I can do 96 jars at a time. So not only will that, we'll be able to produce more, but it's going to make it more efficient, more effective, cheaper for the farmer, more local food getting in the hands of people who want to buy it. And we have, so we're also going to have a bottling packaging room in there. And I came up with the brilliant idea of we're actually going to pipe stainless steel through the wall from the kettles into the bottling packaging room. So, and the way that everything is going to be set up in there, it's just going to flow, and our capacity is going to increase exponentially as we continue to be able to take on a lot more. And, this 10,000 pounds that we've done in the past year, I would think we'll be able to do that in a few months once we're in there.
Sounds hot. Let's get there. Let's get that money. That sounds like an absolute game changer. Thanks for going deeper on that, Scott. Jeff, I see your hand up. Is there something you wanted to add?
Yeah, just a couple things to add on that I thought of around resources is around food safety in particular. If there's anybody or of anybody that needs to address food safety, both University of Maine is they have courses that are required for FSPCA preventative controls, but also you can check in with Bill Whittier as well. They have somebody they work with who, if any businesses need the third-party food safety audit, which is required by a lot of distributors and other retailers, they have someone that I've worked with and is amazing to help build out that plan and get you prepared for your first, second, and third food safety audit. And there's funding for that as well. Probably MTI's Merck program can do it. Maybe even our old Alfond funds can cover it, and MEP can also help find funding to help cover that initial food safety plan for third-party audit. So the two other real nuts and bolts resources that are pretty useful.
That is great. Annie, did you get those? If not, we can get back into the recording and make sure they're captured.
Okay.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, want to save some time for Colleen and Graham to respond to this prompt too around resources and gaps.
Happy to jump in. Just thank you for being the collecting point of all of these resources and great ones on the Department of Ag site too, and not knowing exactly what resources people on the call may be looking for and imagining it may be a wide range. One general catch-all of like, how can I find someone help me when I don't have a mentor in a specific area has been SCORE over the years. I just point that out as a great mentoring free resource that anyone who's looking at entrepreneurship or parts unknown of the work that they're doing, they're wonderful. And then also wanted to kind of in line with what Scott was saying or referencing about whether it's the Western Mass Processing, like really looking regionally. So like in distribution, there's not always mentorship, though I will say, like back in the day when I worked for Farm Fresh Connection, a distributor that used to work at, I learned so much from Martha. I was actually just up visiting her in Holton, who owned this distribution business, serving a lot of the restaurants and starting the farm to school back, whenever that was, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. And so, but within distribution, it's not necessarily that there's like a peer-to-peer learning. We're all super busy. It's all tight margin. It's pretty competitive in a lot of ways. And so like looking regionally has been great. Like Annie Myers out of Vermont has been like a great resource for me in past years as I was getting underway, just like a step behind where she was at with like building out Myers Produce that services Vermont, Western Mass, New York City, and Boston markets. And so just encourage folks to be looking beyond Maine to comparable models of folks doing similar work in adjacent states who may not have sort of geographical overlap with what you're trying to accomplish and might be able to speak more candidly to help you with whatever you're looking to do next. And then not necessarily a gap, but like something that we're definitely going to need next. Like part of my role is like waking up before the farmers wake up to do last batches on orders. And a lot of our systems are antiquated and systems that don't talk to each other. And so we'll specifically be looking for a tech stack developer to be integrating our inventory with a sales platform. And so if anyone knows of someone that is savvy and great at that, that is a gap for us personally where it's fast becoming a bottleneck and there simply aren't enough hours in the day to be processing as we grow those orders before the farmers need to take their harvest lists and get out to the field. And so please do get in touch if you have ideas in that stream. It's not necessarily like the innovation that MTI is looking for with funding or that sort of thing, and not because it's not necessarily like new in that way, but it is a critical need that we will have to continue expanding our mission of serving farms and expanding our distribution of local foods in Maine.
Yeah, super interesting to hear you and Scott mention software as like a really important piece of the puzzle here. Graham.
Yeah, I mean, I think Colleen was spot on. We're in a really competitive marketplace where sort of proprietary information getting into the wrong set of hands can probably genuinely sink a company. Even someone mid-sized like Native Maine, we're certainly larger than a small business at this point, but in a lot of ways we're a lot closer to that than we are some of the broadline competition. And so we have similar versions of those same challenges where our UX platform for our user experience and sort of our tech packages and modernizing those to be able to go to market against these companies that have again Fortune 100 in-house tech. That's always an interesting challenge to try and navigate. And I think finding peers and mentors outside of the marketplace is always super helpful. I have the luxury of, because of my background being across the country, I can call on some folks that can share some information, I think a little bit more freely than anyone who kind of touches our area of distribution. So, and I would definitely underscore, the work that's being done at the Maine Center for Entrepreneurs. I think Naomi Neville leading the Food Accelerator program is the real deal. She's an incredible resource for people, and has really lived what it's like to build out a brand from small to, obviously we all know the presence that Allagash has now, and that was under her leadership on the sales side, growing that business. So I think the more I've gotten to know the resources here in Maine, the more I've been impressed with sort of what's out there, and I think more and more funding going towards those efforts is always beneficial, and that's something that we're always an advocate for. And I wish we could just sort of cut checks to support all the programs we could at large, but we're certainly advocating for these programs and the emergences of new brands, and I think we can do to be a helpful resource, even just sort of with go-to-market insight of kind of how do you get your product from maybe your kitchen to then working with Scott in his kitchen, and how do you get it into end users' hands. It's a conversation we've had dozens of times already in my time here, and continue to be happy to have those.
Thanks, everybody. Super great to hear about all the resources that are available to folks here in Maine, along with some of the challenges. I do want to get to one more question. This is actually, we're going to do a twofer. We're going to combine our last two questions here. So if you want to speak to the recent shifts in federal or state policies and how that's impacted your business, positively or negatively, would love to hear that. And then also what shifts you see coming due to this policy landscape, what we need to be ready for. So that's one question, if you want to respond to that. And then our other question is just more generally, like, what were there pieces that you wanted to bring this conversation that haven't necessarily been asked that you want to highlight about your business successes, challenges, whatever. Does anyone want to jump in?
I think I can jump in. I think we have a
Sure.
really encouraging story from earlier in the year. We work with some folks at the Maine State Department of Corrections. We provide fresh fruit and vegetable for those facilities. And we, through my contacts there, sort of as our end user customers, found out that, we always, as a native Maine, we're always sort of riding alongside a bigger contract. It's just how food service distribution works. So whether it's here, in this example, or college and university, Alex Cowan, who's on call, works very closely with Colby College, and maybe he can jump in after me and kind of talk about that experience. But we found out that the corporate broadliner that owns the majority of the contract, because obviously they have sort of everything that somebody needs to run an operation, like chemicals and gloves and things that native Maine doesn't carry. But there was supposed to be an 80-20 rule on that about overall spend, and this is obviously taxpayer funded, right? And we found out that there was sort of an overreach from the large side of the contract. And as we got more and more information, I kind of took it to our leadership internally, and we were just like, this doesn't sit right. Something's amiss here. And the more I found out, it wasn't just about native Maine and our piece of the puzzle, but there was farmers up in the county that are providing eggs to these facilities that need that $300,000 a year. Otherwise, their whole platform evaporates from underneath their feet, and that probably takes down a town's economy with it. And we talk about being up the county. So I was able to pen a letter to Senator Pierce, who's the Speaker of the House in Augusta at the state capitol. Got a meeting with her and her team, and we kind of just said, hey, this looks like this is going on. There might be some sort of overstepping on this. And she was able to activate her team, and we were able to reconvene with the DOC themselves and kind of right the ship and make sure that everybody on the local end of the contract was able to continue to get their piece of the puzzle. And so I was really encouraged by that, to be able to kind of put that into action and request. You never know how it goes. If you're going to write to legislation, you may or may not get any sort of response at all. And so for a really quick response to come out that way, and to have the backing of the state legislation and the leadership, was really encouraging, to show that the values are still, people are still putting those values into practice and are still protecting the right things, in terms of the go to market from farms and smaller purveyors and providers. So I thought that was really, really exciting and a really nice thing to see happening here in Maine. And Alex, I don't know if you can share a couple of quick thoughts just about what you're able to do going to market, kind of in a similar light against some of the other contracts that are out there, and how you're able to kind of put local product, whether it's from a field or from a manufacturer, into place at these facilities that you're working with.
Yeah, absolutely. And do forgive me, I'm in a bit of a shared space right now. So I will do my best to avoid any sort of crossed audio. But yeah, Colby, as an organization that has so many funds at their disposal that they're able to allocate towards a local advocate like ourselves, like Peak Season, like all these other people, I think they are doing really the good work in the right direction, particularly with the new company that's come in, being partnered with US Foods as one of their big, broadline distributors. It has kind of worked to our advantage, because we've had a lot more flexibility to be able to go in, and we've been, at least I've been able to do work directly with leadership to have them be more local focused. And it has been received incredibly well by that team there. And I really want to applaud Colby for what they're doing as an organization as a whole, to advocate for more local partners, making sure that the kids who are paying the tuition that they pay are getting quality products that are locally sourced. And I've really seen a shift just in the mentality across campus. And I do apologize for the cross audio that I am currently sharing.
Well, you sounded fine. And thanks for sharing that, Alex. Can also say it's been great to work with Colby. We just had our MEFD summit there, and they were super accommodating for getting local food in. Okay, want to give a chance for others to respond to this question about policy and or other things that you want to bring to the table. Let's try and keep it brief, as we are trying to head into our breakout rooms in just a couple minutes.
I don't know if I'm capable of speaking briefly on this subject, because I have so much to say about how policy is affecting food and farming in general. And I think just the general sentiment that I'd put out there is that we are looking at like a very orchestrated dismantling of our social services, and it's going to hit hard for rural Americans. It's going to hit hard for rural Mainers, and food is a basic need. And us all just keeping that in mind as we go into this winter, as people are digesting changes to healthcare right now. SNAP was cut before the delays that we've been experiencing and the ambiguity about it. Early childhood education, LIHEAP, all of it is coming in a monsoon for folks, with grocery prices also, of course, higher than they've been. And so I'd like to think that there may be room through MAHA or through mandates on domestic spending, but without backing that up with actually funding the programs that have been systematically cut over this past 9 months, that support our farms and actually allow for the product that would allow us to be getting local food out to Maine, out to our country in any sizable volume. There really isn't the support backing up the support to farmers to be able to do that. And so just think we're all in critical positions of making sure that our neighbors have access to food and doing what we can to advance that. And Graham particularly loved that story about getting in touch with Senator Pierce, because I think that advocacy is what we need to be doing right now, and any ways that we can be taking corporate or larger or dining management services that are taking percentages and reinvesting them in our local economy, and keeping money close to home to be able to address the root cause is critically important. So I'm sorry if that wasn't brief. Again, I could say so much more, but I'm gonna stop there.
Here,
I'm with you,
here.
Colleen. If I could just really quickly, I'd like to also just shout out, the food service sort of community that we work with here in Maine and Greater New England. There's been so many people, restaurants. We talk about tight margins in distribution. Restaurants today have literally single-digit margins if they get it right. I mean, it's fiercely sort of survivalist in that industry, quite frankly. And to see these people continue, I mean, everybody in the hospitality industry comes from a core of hospitality. So it's about service to your guests, your community, the people around you. And to see so many of them activating and really stepping up and saying, hey, I've had so many phone calls. Can we get this from you? Can we get that from you? What can I get from you? I'm putting meal kits together. Black Trumpet down in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Chef Evan Mallett down there, who owns it, has been doing, no questions asked, once a week meal kits for folks affected by SNAP. And obviously in Kittery, Maine, with the seaport there, that's a huge part. There's a lot of federal employees in that community. So to see the hospitality industry kind of go above and beyond to meet the moment has been, really encouraging. But to rely on bottom up philanthropy, I think, is probably a broken model. We can all agree. So the advocacy is really, really important, to Colleen's point.
Thank you, Graham. I also just want to lift up the note in the chat from Brittany about the Maine Food Policy Workgroup meeting that is happening this afternoon at 1. The Zoom link is in the chat. If you want to go deeper on food policy, join us. Okay. Scott or Jeff, do you have anything you want to add here?
I can add something very briefly, just that we've been very lucky that our USDA grant didn't get cut. The Second Harvest Partnership, which allows me to get paid, has not been cut. So that's great. We also received some additional money from the Maine Department of Ag to buy some more equipment. I believe that was specifically for packaging equipment. But, once again, hate to keep harping on this, but the biggest issue is that most of these grants, specifically federal grants, even if we could get a bunch more, they will not pay for construction. So completing that space is still incomplete. And so, basically we're assuming that we're not going to be getting any money from the government for the next 3 years. And so we've been going after private funding. If anyone has any ideas about that, please feel free to share. And then I did also just want to mention that we're actually going to be coming out with an economic impact report of Fork Food Lab. I'm not positive if it's out yet, but it will be soon. And there's some pretty incredible numbers of what we've been able to accomplish. And that impact report is just from 1 year, from 2024 to 2025. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Scott. That should help maybe attract some private philanthropy. Jeff, what you got?
Yeah, I don't have too much to add, so I can keep it brief as well. Yeah, I just think if we want to continue growing more food and processing more food, really having that public funding is going to be critical to it, right? We were fortunate enough for the AIIP funds. I'm going to step out of my car so you can see what it's gotten us behind me. Let's see, original building. I just rotated. Sorry, did I come right again, or am I still rotated?
You're good.
So, and then boom, we added. It's a lot bigger than it looks in this photo, but right. So the AIIP covered about 30% of this project, but without that funding, I wouldn't have been able to. I didn't have the funds to leverage the mortgage and a bank construction loan to do the rest of the project. So, that sort of, it's required. It's just necessary. We couldn't have done it without it. So, yeah, we, if we can keep moving forward with more public funding of food processing and groups. The other thing though is back to the gaps real quick is the at least for us is the whole sales piece becomes so challenging as well as we continue to grow and businesses continue to grow and support around that. Because we're in a remote area, it's hard to just get on the road and go drive places to sell lots of tofu, and that's something else to consider as a need down the road. A little bit of a tangent there at the end, and not too brief, but I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Oh, that's great. And thank you for showing us your facility. That's always really fun to see. To clarify, Jeff, I'm hearing a gap around accessing the wholesale market, or is it a distribution issue?
I think it's more just like getting out there, getting indoors, getting in new retailers,
Okay.
getting in new restaurants, really like that nitty-gritty selling. And, distributors help with that, but it's, yeah, I think sometimes getting that just next level of sales as well, just to help get us in front of people who are really interested in carrying, the different types of products.
Yeah, heard.
It's hard to find. It's hard to find time. It's just it's time intensive and travel intensive. I think is the hardest part of it. You can be on the phone, you can send emails, and that's great. But even that's hard sometimes to find time to do.
Oh yeah.
So yeah.
I think particularly around sampling food, whether it's in schools or it's at a retailer, there's a lot that distributors can do to market and sell, but then there's educational components where until people try something, they're not buying it. And so that extra layer of like cooking with people and sampling food out and the education and hands-on of it, I see as a need that I just echo Jeff's sentiment.
Yeah, it takes a lot to show up and find that capacity. Awesome. Okay. We are gonna go out into our breakout rooms for 5 or so minutes. The intention here is to meet each other, reflect a little bit about what you've heard today from our panelists, and then come back. If each group could have one question, we will pose those in the chat and then allow our panelists to choose what they want to respond to. Sound good?
Panelists, feel free to not click that button if you need a little bit of a break. Totally fine. I'm just doing 4 breakout groups, guessing that there's going to be a lot of drop-offs. If you end up being in a breakout group alone, just come on back here and we'll put you in another breakout group. All right. See you in about 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay.
Hold on, spotlight. Yeah.
I'm here if y'all need anything. I just went off camera for a second to like unkink my net.
Do your thing.
Fair enough.
All right. So
This
about
person.
12:15. Bring back.
Yes.
Okay. I'll be right back, unless you need me. Okay.
We'll get the next one. Thank you, Graham.
Yeah, sure.
Looks like the questions are rolling in. Panelists, can you see those? I know some
Yeah.
of you are on phones. So we've got a question about how we promote local food purchasing and help people see the value in it and appreciate it. Question about incentives for consumers to buy local. Question or a conversation about food system education. What do you wish people
They're
understood?
all
Go for it, Jeff.
like they're all like the same question, more or less. I mean, they're very similar.
So, I mean, I think we see a theme here, right? Like, how do we get local products into the hands of, whether it be end users like restaurants or consumers on retail? I think one of the things that's happened, again, to the credit of the state of Maine, is the incentivization of local purchasing and the increased rebate this year for the K-12. We have the K-12 contracts for fresh produce in the state of Maine and a vast majority of the state of New Hampshire as well. But Maine has incentivized through a rebate program K-12 schools to purchase local. And that goes beyond produce even. So that's something that we're really heavily messaging. So there used to be a 25% rebate for that, where the state would refund 25% of purchase dollars made to local, brands. So whether it would be like Heiwa tofu or just locally grown produce, they've increased that because of the climate to 50% this year. And we're working on making sure everybody understands the value in that and really leans into those local purchases as much as possible. So that's been a nice tool to kind of have on behalf of the state as well.
And Alita, what do you think about other people jumping in too, who are coming and listen? And I know you just wrote something in the chat, but I feel like it's something that there's a lot of wisdom in this group, so feel free to jump in.
Absolutely.
Steve, I'll read what you wrote, but feel free to pipe in more. Steve in the chat wrote, my experience with food collecting at Hannaford. I don't know if it's 5% or not, but a group does gather food at Hannaford every week, I think 2 days each week. Like last week, the group I work with got 34 banana boxes of good food that went to a local food pantry. And Steve, if you, I don't know if you want to pipe in, but talk about who this is.
This is Central Maine Gleaners Group. This is in Waterville. And we go to both Hannaford's in Waterville. And it was the woman who runs the soup kitchen was doing this by herself. And so then someone else organized it. So the first Friday of every month, I join a group of people that go to one place. So it's once a month, but a lot of it's like the baked goods, the cakes and the muffins and stuff, but we also get a large amount of like I don't know, anyway, a large amount of good food that goes. It's literally a 5-minute trip across town, so it goes from one refrigerator to the next, and it's Hannaford is contributing quite a lot. And 3 years ago, a senior at Colby College started a food recovery network chapter. So Colby has a food recovery network, has a chapter there. And it's small participation, but I was connecting with Alex with his connections at Colby to try to get that going again, because they in my experience they waste food. They know it too, but they try to cut back, and they've done some programs. I just by happenstance, a couple weeks ago I connected with the maintenance people and a couple of students at Colby that run the garden that they have up there. So
Yeah.
hopefully I'll be getting some food for the food pantry when they harvest.
Especially key right now, Steve. Melissa and also Harry, if you want to expand a little bit, I know this, we like to talk about coordination a lot these days. But Melissa, go ahead, your hand is up. Sorry.
I was just gonna say that, when Graham said that the whole state's kind of working from like the bottom up, like we're all like it's the poor folk, we're the ones that are doing everything. And I just said that in the last meeting that, I wish that we had a way of holding these bigger conglomerates, the broadliners, the bigger institutions, more like accountable, because it's like you're seeing our schools, you're seeing these local restaurants, you're seeing all these people that don't have the budgets to do this, and I just think that sometimes we need to get more of them at the table, because sometimes it just takes like one person at one company. And I was saying, I was so happy to see distributors here today. I was like, this is awesome. But maybe bringing some of those bigger ones in, they're the ones that I think that they're holding all those contracts, right? Like, so I'll say it, when on Native Maine and even working at Harvesting Good, Cisco holds majority of a Sodexo contract. You have another company that will hold the local food, but certain items are still going to be sold through the broadline. You know what I mean? It's just very odd. And then they have ways of, they'll swap out your stuff for their stuff. They just won't send it. They won't even talk to you. It's really hard. So I just think that maybe bringing them in and holding them sort of like accountable, like, you guys are making the most money out of this state. Like, how about you do something for us? But it's just me.
My first response to that is preach. I'm with you. I think continuing to advocate is the best avenue that we probably have from this level of, the economy that we're all working out of. I think Maine is still a small enough state in terms of listening to the people in our communities from a legislative standpoint, that there's a little bit of hope there here locally anyways. I'd love to see a future where X percentage of certainly the taxpayer funded and subsidized programs such as K-12 schools, such as the different departments like the Department of Corrections example we touched on before. Those 80-20 rules are kind of the bare minimum that's possible. And to Melissa's point, the corporate broadliners will be on CNBC after their earnings call talking about, well, we sell more than 50 label product now, and we're really excited about that. It's because they make a lot more money on it, but it means that they're switching out. They might say, I'm going to sell your product, and then oops, we don't have it. Here's ours instead. And that can be an oops, and that can be an intentional oops. And I don't want to draw a specific ire of anyone specifically, so I won't name names, but it definitely happens. We'd love to see a future, I think, where the taxpayer funded programs are not going to places like Houston to fund stock buyback programs in the billions of dollars a year. That's where we specifically, I think, decided to activate, for myself anyways, and start that letter process that we talked about. So it's definitely a challenge. I think corporate consolidation is not unique to the food service arena by any means, or sort of the supply chain of food. I think the other encouraging piece certainly for those of us who care about local values and keeping things in state and keeping things as local as possible for our small businesses is that the slow food movement has really caught fire. People actually really care and pay attention now to where their food is coming from. I think that's a seed change in the last 10 years. When I first started my culinary career, that just didn't matter to diners. And now they really care about where things are coming from at large, and they're really paying attention to how far afield their product is being sourced from. And I joke internally, that's great propaganda for us, I'm sure Colleen's in the same boat, even more so probably. And we really lean into that messaging about understanding where your products are coming from and sourcing as local as possible all the time. So hopefully that groundswell, eventually legislators have to respond to the majority opinion, whether they sort of directly do so or not. They understand where public opinion sits, and the more that gets voiced, I think the better it is for everybody, in rooms like this and beyond.
Yeah, like make them process here. You know what I mean? Instead of buying from California, make them process here at least. Do something,
Sure.
where you're bringing some money back to the state would be great. Sorry.
Yes, no. we're all here for it. Thank you, Melissa and Graham. And that feels like a great place to wrap for today. So appreciate all of you coming out, especially our panelists, for sharing your perspectives on where you sit in the middle of the supply chain and what we all can do as a work group to build our awareness and support you all better so that we are seeing more local foods making it to consumers. I'm going to drop into the chat our impact survey. This really helps us demonstrate the impact of this work group. So if you have a second to fill that out, we would really appreciate it. And reminder that this is just part one of a 6-part webinar series. We'll be having more conversations like this. December's is all around utilizing farm seconds, so sort of B grade produce and turning that into value added products. So join us for that. And thank you, Annie. Reminder that we have half an hour. Go grab some lunch, and then I hope to see a lot of you at the policy work group at 1. Anything else to add, Annie?
Nope. Nice to see everybody. Thanks for sticking around. So good to see your faces. See you later. Have some good lunch.
Talk soon.